Hey y'all, hey, hello. I am tired. I feel like that's like my opening line for every video that I film. I'm tired. Well, sis, you always tired, so maybe we're not gonna even get into that. Hello, hi, welcome to a discussion slash look at what I read in May. I wanted to start this off this way because I have come to realize that just did this video on like reading habits that I don't like. Here's another one of my reading habits that I don't like. Not necessarily that I don't like. I have been struggling with wrap-ups a lot. I have been trying to find a method that is really works for me and still gives y'all a full picture of what I've been reading for the month. I do read a lot, and not because it's a competition, it's because it's a race. I've actually slowed down my reading, but the volume has increased because of the demographic that I'm shifting towards. One of my goals this year was to really hone in on my love and appreciation for children's lit. So exploring level readers, picture books, chapter books. You know, I already read a lot of middle grade, but I wanted to explore kind of those categories that were aimed at younger kids. And so as an adult, it doesn't take me long to read some of those materials. And so while on the adult, and even the middle grade a little bit, the adult, the YA and middle grade side has actually slowed down quite a bit. The volume, the number that I'm reading has increased because of that, as well as me opening up that second channel with the comics, the graphic novels, and the manga. And so I have been really leaning into reading what I love. I have come to the realization that I want to be able to share everything that I read with y'all. But if I'm being honest and realistic with myself, I literally would have to do a weekly wrap up. Those for me, even in terms of time and filming, were just too much on me. It was too much. I needed more flexibility than what a weekly wrap up was giving me. I needed something that was going to be essentially considerate of my time and considerate of my life changes and the ebbing and flowing of my, you know, busy moments in life. And because there are certain points in my career and in my personal life where I get exceptionally busy, and we're in the midst of one right now, and it's difficult. Another thing is that I don't like editing. I know that's probably a very weird thing to say considering I'm in a hobby that requires editing, but it's kind of like I love the end game of it all. I love being able to create content, and I love being able to upload content and share it with you all, but I don't like the editing process. I've never been a fan of it. That's just me personally. I know a lot of people find it very soothing and relaxing. It's me. I don't know what it is. I'm just not a fan of it. I don't. I'm long-winded. And when I review books, I like to go in depth. I do not want to edit 2-3 hours worth of footage to par it down to an hour and some change full-length feature film for y'all to watch of me talking about books. Another issue that I've placed on myself and a pressure that I've given myself is that I love reviewing. I want to review every book that I read, and it's not realistic. Not for the volume that I'm reading. I can't keep up with myself, and so one of the things that you probably did not know is that on the back end, I like to have my reviews written and completed before I sit down and film a review, because my thoughts are very organized when I'm writing a review, and so I use that as a point of reference whenever I'm doing my reviews. And I feel like I don't have that same point of reference when they're not done. And so I would put off doing wrap-ups because it's like, well, I haven't finished my reviews, so I don't want to sit down and do a wrap-up and then come across as just completely chaotic and really not succinct in what I'm trying to say about the book. My videos are never scripted. I'm always off the dome, but in terms of capturing exactly what I want to discuss about a book, I do like having those notations available to me. That's absolutely ludicrous, to be honest with you. There's no rules, there's no guidebook here that says I must give you a full-blown PhD dissertation whenever I'm reviewing a book. I do like to give more than I like this book. Like, some people are okay with that. I like to give a little bit more of a review than that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I just like to give a little bit more in depth. But no one is telling me that I have to spend 10-15 minutes talking about a single book. Like, no one is telling me that. But I had put that pressure on myself, and so inevitably it ends up with me putting off doing wrap-ups, and then we get to a situation like now where I have not been keeping up with my reviews at all. I have been incredibly busy. I am too tired when I come home from work. You know, I have been really focusing on my physical, mental, and emotional health, and so I've been prioritizing that. So, you know, even with reading, even though it seems like I'm reading a lot, trust me, I am reading a lot, but think about what I'm reading, and if you look at it closely, I'm really not reading as much as I think I have in the past. It just looks that way because of the children's lit, which there's nothing wrong with that. This is not a competition. You know, you read one book, you read 50 books at the end of the day. I don't care. I'm not here to have that conversation. We have that conversation 3-4 times a year. It's like a good old freaking family reunion every time we do that. I don't want to talk about it here. But I have slowed down because my priorities have shifted a little bit away from just, you know, when I put my child in bed, I'm instantaneously reading. That's just not happening anymore. When I put my child down, I am instantaneously working out now. And so that drains, it takes a lot of energy out of me after working a full day. And then I also get in a small movement workout while I'm at work for about 45 minutes. So my body is tired. I'm using a lot of energy, and it's just not happening. So I am not sitting down and writing reviews. When I have the weekends, we're out of the house enjoying and doing things. And so I am just stuck in this cycle of being behind. And so because I'm stuck in that cycle of being behind, I feel like I have to be behind on here, but I just can't do it anymore. I'm done keeping stats. I just can't, y'all. The tracking, I think, is cool. I like the idea of it. But for me, in a realistic, conceptual way, it's not gonna happen. I'm never gonna do it because my brain doesn't work that way. I think that in part of me taking care of myself with my mental, physical, and emotional health, I am coming to terms with things that I'm just not capable of doing. And I think that I have struggled with feeling like this is not the way things are supposed to be, that I'm supposed to be a person that is meticulous at tracking and keeping statistics and, you know, diving deep into everything and having this analytical mind, which I do, but I don't want to do it. And a lot of me recentering me has been, if I don't want to do it, I'm not doing it. And so I haven't wanted to keep statistics. I haven't wanted to write a review, and so I haven't done it. And I go to bed and still feel peaceful and wake up feeling just fine. It's not a stressor because I refuse to allow it to be that. But of course it does change the way things will be done on this channel. I don't want to spend time reviewing every book that I read. I would love to review every single book that I read for y'all, but realistically speaking, for me, I can't. I can't do it because I talk a lot. And I will keep talking and talking and talking. And when we go over even what I've read for this month, if I sat down and reviewed all of those in a video, y'all, you would be here for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And that's with it edited down. That's a lot of footage to render and to take care of, and I don't want to do it. I don't want wrap-ups to be stressful for me. I don't want to have to be so meticulous about this process. I want to share with you the books that, you know, the highs and the lows of the month. And so I was doing that at one point last year, where I was giving the best and the worst books of the month, but I was also doing the weekly vlogs. I can't do that. I just, it's working. This is what I'm saying. My brain is just, I don't know how to explain it. And I'm struggling so bad to find the words to explain why I can do that for my comic book channel, but I can't do that for this channel. I don't know what that is. It feels different and it feels better on that channel than it does over here. And I don't know. So the weekly wrap-ups weren't working. The weekly vlogs weren't working. I really don't want to do a mid-month and a end of the month wrap-up. You know why? Because at the end of the day, even when I do weekly wrap-ups, they're still long, and it has been just ridiculous trying to figure out what works best for me. And so I just have come to a point, like, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to be able to review every book that I read on here. I literally have decided what I will do is at the end of each month, or in the beginning of the following month, for the previous month, I will tell you everything that I read. I'm not even going to star ratings or none of that. I will tell you everything that I've read, and then I will give you the best and the worst. And that's just the format that we're going to have to work with. If you want to see full reviews, I think that the best thing to do is to follow me on Goodreads. But even then, at the time that I upload videos, I cannot guarantee that the reviews will be up to date. And that's just reality for me. Like, I think that I, like a lot of people, have struggled with certain, I guess, certain ideas of what you think you're supposed to be as a booktuber and what you're supposed to do. And then you get to this point, you reach this moment where you're like, just do what I want to do. Like, what works best for me is what's going to work, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to stress myself out over this. I'm not going to create, you know, another point of stress for me because I have this perception of what I think I should be doing, when reality and how my life works is not conducive for any of that. So let's go ahead and dive into what I read in May, which I read quite a bit in May, as you will see. One thing that I do like to point out is that I will mention the manga, comics, and graphic novels that I read in May. But ironically, see, this is the weird thing. If you go on that channel, you will be getting full-length discussions about the books that I'm reading. But I don't do wrap-ups on that channel. I think I've done maybe like a couple of lives, and I was not happy with that. Like, sitting there talking for hours about what I read. And so I switched to vlog format on that channel, and it works. And so I am going to keep it that way and maybe do highs and lows over there as well. But if you do want more detailed information about the comics, graphic novels, and manga, I would say, you know, subscribe to that channel, or, you know, check the content out. If it's not for you, don't subscribe. You know, whatever works best for you, whatever you feel is best. So like I said, I'm gonna list the ones that that I did read, and then we're going to talk about the best and the worst of the month. All right, so March Volume 1, March Volume 2, March Volume 3, Run Volume 1, Shakti, A Half-Baked Murder, The Dragonette Prophecy, It's One of Us, Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro, Imakoi Volume 1, Imakoi Volume 2, Imakoi Volume 3, and Imakoi Volume 4. Finding Papa, Hagi Went A-Courtin', Eva's Treetop Festival, The Rhythm of Time, Thou Shall Not Return, The Yellow Handkerchief, Little Black Lives Matter, Rumor Central, Dim Sum Here We Come, You Don't Know Me Like That, Real As It Gets, Mango Mambo Murder, Ring of Solomon, Asadora Volume 3, The One Thing You'd Save, Survival Street, Go Tell It on the Mountain, The Fire Next Time, The Amen Corner, The Marshmallow Martians, Turtle Bread, This Poison Heart, Christie's Great Idea, Nigeria Jones, Mimi and the Boohoo Blahs, Clark the Shark, and the School Sing, Fantastic Four Full Circle, Jurassic League, Miracle, Villains Are Destined to Die, Garlic and Vampire, Triss's book, Princess Sharp, Cleopatra in Space, Surf's Up Creepy Stuff, Delicious Monsters, King Bayou, Pirate and Mermaid, The Little Mermaid, Josephine Against the Sea, 2043, and Mermaid Princesses. Okay, so as you can see, that's a lot. And if I attempted to wrap all of that up, it would be too much, y'all. It would literally just be excessive and ridiculous. And so yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Granted that a good bit of that stuff is children's lit, and a lot of it did not take me long to read. It still is a huge volume of things to cover. One thing that's interesting about May is that it was a very good reading month. It was a very good reading month, and my disappointments were primarily in one vlog, and so I don't really have disappointments to cover this month in particular, because they were a part of my Black Mermaid reading vlog that I did for the release of the new Little Mermaid movie that came out last week. And the two books that I talked about that were disappointing in that vlog were King Bayou and then the 2043, A Mermaid something, the book by Nisi Shaw. So those were my most disappointing reads, and I don't want to rediscuss them here. If you want to know why those were so disappointing for me, definitely check out that vlog, and I'll link that up in the card symbol above. But those were my disappointments for the month. I did have one comic book that was ultimate garbage, a 1-star read, but I've already talked about that on my other channel, so if you want to know that, go check it out. So we're going to go ahead that quick and shift over to the things that I absolutely loved. This month, I have 5. I will do, in the future, I will always do 5 and 5. And it necessarily won't always be the worst, but maybe like disappointments as well. And I did do this. I did this last year, and it worked. But I was doing this on top of vlogs, and it was just ridiculous. It's just too much. All right. So let's start with one, definitely by far a read along that I'm really enjoying. And when I say best, these are not books that ultimately, or I shouldn't say ultimately, these are not books that have necessarily gotten 5 stars from me. These are books that have stuck with me in my reading experience, that I think I just enjoyed experiencing the book. And so the first ones that I'm going to go with, I couldn't really choose, which is unfortunate. But if you did not know, Erica from The Broken Spine has been hosting a James Baldwin read-along. And I am participating along with Erica and Josh from Josh's Bookish Voyage. Josh, I hope I did not tear your channel name up. But I've been working with the two of them, and we're slowly making our way through James Baldwin's backlist. And so for the month of May, or for the month of April, the live show took place in May, but of course I didn't start my books until May. We read Go Tell It on the Mountain, The Fire Next Time, and The Amen Corner. Now these are 3 very different works in terms of, I think, where they fit. So you have Go Tell It on the Mountain, which is literary fiction. Then you have The Fire Next Time, which is an essay collection, and then The Amen Corner, which is a play. So in terms of like their format, they're different, but they all discuss the impact of religion and James Baldwin's perception of religion. The book Go Tell on the Mountain is semi-autobiographical and really gives a little bit of insight to James Baldwin's feelings about how religion shaped him as a child. He was a pastor at one point, which I did not know until we started this deep dive into James Baldwin as a person and his works included. We had a very robust conversation about all of these works because they were just very interesting. I think Go Tell It on the Mountain was, the storytelling in that was very interesting because it doesn't follow a linear storyline, and you are getting to know each character in a very interesting way. And so you travel through time getting to know these characters, and then you get to see how their experiences have essentially informed who they are as humans. And unfortunately, you know, when we talked about it, we were like, you know, the father of that book just, he doesn't get it. Like, even at the end of the book, he just doesn't get it. He has these unrealistic expectations and perceptions of roles that people are supposed to fulfill, especially those roles in terms of religion. And it definitely impacts his stepson and how him and his stepson interact. And it's a lot of him carrying his own burdens and trauma and kind of projecting his trauma and his decisions that he's made out onto everyone else. And so he's dealing with this inability to reconcile that he made decisions that were against his religious beliefs. And so he feels guilty about it, but instead of dealing with that guilt and really healing and forgiving himself for that, he has absolved himself and has projected his ill feelings onto everyone else and is making everyone essentially pay for his sins. And so Baldwin just continues with just this very intricate and very deep look at the impact and trauma sometimes, not trauma sometimes, trauma a lot of times, that religion can have on people. And we see him expand his thoughts about religion, not just in terms of Christianity, but he ended up meeting the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which I did not know that I mean, it adds up because of the time, but it never clicked in my head that I don't know why. I guess because of the way that we study certain historical figures, I think that we often look at them kind of in kind of like a self-enclosed bubble. Like they don't really seem to have interacted with other people in terms of like other people who were involved with movements at the time, which is so not realistic. But it's a very vacuumed, narrow space, I think, sometimes when we're taught about certain historical figures. And so, of course, it would make sense that Baldwin would end up meeting Elijah Muhammad. That makes complete and total sense that he would. It just never clicked to me. But I think one of the interesting things that he was talking about is that even the intersection of race and religion, and how the Nation of Islam was functioning, you know, in the 50s and 60s, and its impact on communities, and how the rhetoric is not that different than what you would see in Christianity, but the role of races has been swapped and flopped. And, you know, not everyone would necessarily agree with that, but I think that his analysis of it, his interaction with Elijah Muhammad, was just very intriguing. And then in the Amen Corner with the play, we're looking at the hypocrisy that I think can exist in organized religion, in the institution of religion. When religion becomes institutionalized, there's a lot of hypocrisy, because we're following a woman who is the leader of her church, and there's also some interesting kind of perceptions of gender roles when it comes to religion. I know that I grew up in they never define themselves as Pentecostal, but I strongly believe that they were Pentecostal. And so I grew up in an environment and went to a church where women were not supposed to wear makeup, you weren't supposed to wear jewelry, you weren't supposed to wear pants. And the preacher often believed or stated that a woman had no business preaching, that was a man's job. And so we see a little bit of that in the Amen Corner, and she is dealing with her church essentially is turning on her because her ex-husband comes back into the picture, and some things come out about their relationship that were not true. And so you watch the church slowly begin to question her validity as a pastor, her capability of being a pastor, because she's human. She's making these mistakes that are human. And so I think it's also this commentary of like, there is no room for imperfection, which is, it's stressful. That is stressful. But either way, like I couldn't just pick one. So I enjoyed every single one of them. I gave Go Tell It on the Mountain and The Fire Next Time 5 stars, and I ended up giving the Amen Corner 4 stars. So if you're interested in more of my thoughts. We end up having a really, really great conversation about it, and I'll link that up in the card symbol above. But I do recommend like joining us. We are reading If Beale Street Could Talk, and that's going to be this month's live show discussion. So if you're interested in joining in, you still have time to, you know, pick up the book and read it. All right, so I'm cheating again because the next thing that I'm talking about is another series of books. I have been wanting to go back and read a lot of Black YA contemporary or realistic fiction from like, you know, 10 plus years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And there used to be certain imprints that would specifically write Black literature geared towards a young adult audience that was very so cognizant of the audience that they were serving. And I ended up finding Rashonda Tate Billingsley. She did a whole series, it's a 6-book series called Rumor Central. And I was like, oh, you know, I had seen those covers before, but I hadn't read the books. And so I saw them on Hoopla and went to go check them out. And so I ended up reading Rumor Central, You Don't Know Me Like That, and Real As It Gets. I flew through these because they were so good. They're so messy and there's so much drama. It follows a main character by the name of Maya Morgan. And her group of friends are part of this reality TV show. Well, the network decides that they kind of want to shift things up and change things. And in doing that, they're pretty much like, we want to keep Maya, but we're going to get rid of the rest of you. So Maya's not a likable character at all. Like, if you're interested in these books, don't go in thinking that you're going to like Maya, because you won't like her. She's horrible. She doesn't really learn. I mean, she has her bright moments where things click, but she's not like this changed person. And that's what makes it so interesting, is because she's not somebody that you're like, oh, I absolutely adore her and her character development. No. If you like the drama, if you like the messiness, which I think that, not saying that all teens are drama and messy, that's not, but I think that these were written in a way that definitely would appeal to a teen audience. And I appreciated that, because I know I often talk about the gaps now that are being created in young adult, but I think exploring some of these older titles is when we were still getting it right. Not so much anymore, but we were getting it right back then. So the series itself follows Maya Morgan. It's told through her perspective. Like I said, once the network drops her friend, she kind of gets her own segment where she's Rumor Central, where she is giving tea on her classmates and people that live in her town, and they're all very wealthy. So they all attend this school. They all have very, I want to say popular, because it seems kind of like famous. They all have, I'm tired. I'm struggling to find synonyms here. They all have famous or like high profile parents. And so all of them come from money. But they all have a lot of dirt. And so Maya essentially starts milking people for information while losing all of her friends in the process. And she just doesn't really care, because this is what she wants to do. She wants to be this reviewer, but it does tackle some interesting topics. And I think that there's always this moment where Maya realizes, like, okay, I didn't make the best decision. Like, you know, I'm still gonna be me. I'm still gonna be fabulous. I'm still gonna have this attitude. I'm still gonna do what I want to do. But she'll always have kind of like that one moment where she's like, okay, I probably shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have revealed that information, or I shouldn't have done that to this friend. And so she slowly is trying to build back relationships with her friends, but in some ways she just doesn't care. So we sift into book 2 and 3. It gets even more interesting, because book 2 is kind of like a role reversal, where Maya's reputation is getting ruined by someone, and she doesn't necessarily know who's trying to ruin her reputation, and they are literally making her look very, very bad. This is where we get the introduction of another character that is possibly a love interest. I really, really love him. I think he's adorable, but Maya is like, I don't date nerds, but I think that he's going to he's going to change Maya's mind. I'm not there yet. I just started book 4, and so he's he becomes a central character to the narrative. You know, we meet him in book 2, but he does become a central character to the narrative. And so in that one, the two of them build this friendship, and he's helping her, trying to figure out like, okay, well, who is this person that is making you look bad? Like sending emails from your email address and, you know, posting through your social media accounts when they're not supposed to. Going back to like the underlying commentary, like I think book 2 really focused in on internet safety. And so these things are really done in very subtle ways. It's not very like thrown in your face, but I think these are realistic things that Rashonda was tackling at the time. So that first one is just a lot about boundaries and respect and friendship. And in the second one, we're getting a lot of, you know, discussions about privacy and internet safety and how to, you know, when you're doing your passwords, like what should you be doing? Like how do you practice these things in real time? And in the third one, we get into kind of a darker conversation about substance abuse and how it can impact teens. And there's this new drug that's on the market that these people are taking, and it's killing them. And so this is the first time that we really get to see Maya do some serious investigative work, and not so much of the rumor stuff, but really like she's concerned that, you know, people that she knows, people in her community are dying from this drug use. So their drama, they're messy, and Maya's not necessarily a likable character, but I appreciate it that we're getting these themes that are very realistic and relevant to teens that would have been reading these books at that time. I also love the fact that it wasn't in your face. It's kind of like hiding vegetables in, you know, like zucchini bread. Like you can't taste it, but it's there, so you get the nutrients. It's kind of like that same principle. Like you can't taste it, you don't necessarily know that it's there, but you're getting the nutrients out of it that you need to be healthy. And so that's what she did. I enjoy those, y'all. Each one of those 4 stars. I know everybody's not going to agree because Maya's not a likable character. She's horrible. She's horrible. She's horrible. The next one that I ended up reading was Ring of Solomon, which is a middle grade fantasy that has amazing, amazing Jewish representation. And I had been meaning to read this one for a while when it originally came out, but I had not had the chance to pick it up. So this one is interesting because I don't think I've read a book that focuses on Jewish mythology. And Ring of Solomon focuses on a young kid by the name of Zach. He is both Jewish and queer, and he faces a lot of bullying at school. So this definitely has content warnings for anti-Semitism as well as homophobia. And he ends up finding this ring, and this ring gives him like these powers. But what he doesn't realize is that it also brings about some other visitors, one of them being Ashmedai, who is the king of demons, and who then has to kind of change his entire personality, and well, not his personality, because he definitely doesn't change his personality. He has to change what he looks like in order to be a part of this world. And it's interesting the adjust, because he hasn't been amongst humans in a long time, and so you can kind of see his process of adjusting to what human life is like since his absence. What I liked is that this explored Jewish mythology in a way that was accessible to me as someone who is not of the Jewish faith. Now, in terms of representation, I know that the author is Jewish. I can't speak to the representation at all. I just know that I learned a lot in terms of the representation in Jewish mythology. This is not an end-all be-all. I'm not saying this is like, you know, a 101, but I thought it was interesting, like even learning like with Ashmedai, you know, king of demons, it's not demons in the same way that I think I have been taught in Christianity. And so you learn things as like he's asking his mother certain questions, and she's explaining like, you know, it's not as black and white as you think it is when we think like angels and demons in terms of Jewish mythology. And so, of course, he ends up fighting, like I said, the Ring of Solomon. There's this society that steals a ring, and what they want to do is bring 3 beasts to Earth in order to start the apocalypse at the end of times. I thought this was super, super fast paced. I thought that it was fun. It was engaging. Like I said, I learned a lot, and I'm excited that this is going to be a series, and it's a shorter fantasy series. It's not as dense as I was expecting. Like when I saw the physical book for the first time, I was like, oh, this is not as thick as I was expecting for a middle grade fantasy book, and it has Jewish representation. It's just a plus all around. I think the pacing of this one was really, really good. I think that we get to meet a unique set of characters throughout this. I think that Ash is, I love Ash. Ash is just an amazing character, and there's a lot of mysterious things that I think unfold in learning more about his relationship with King Solomon and the treatment that happened there, and his feelings. His feelings are explored a lot, and a lot of things that happened to him in the past explain why he functions the way that he functions now. So I'm not sure when the second book is coming out, but I did really enjoy that. Next I have Nigeria Jones, which is E.B. Zaboy's latest release. I really enjoy E.B. Zaboy as a writer. Everything is not always a hit for me. Sometimes there are misses, but I was really interested in this one because this explores some interesting things. I think that there's this mix of the exploration of Black power and pride in your Blackness, and being very concerned with the plight of Black people in America, but running a very, very thin line of behavior that becomes, in essence, very controlling, very, and I don't want to use the word cult, but it keeps you in a bubble. And so we're following Nigeria Jones, who is a part of this movement, and her father and her mother are a part of it. And at the beginning of the novel, you're learning that her mother's missing. She's celebrating her brother's birthday, and she's having trouble understanding her role in this movement. And, you know, she's been trained to think a certain way, to perceive life a certain way. There is no interactions with white people at all. And her father is not a fan of any relationships, like not even romantic, platonic. Working relationships with white people are not a thing for him. And so we're seeing this very extreme of perspective, with the best of intentions of trying to empower Black people, to be self-sufficient, to take care of their own. And so it's, I'm still trying to process it, because I don't know if this was E.B. Zaboy's means of saying that any type of beliefs that you have, the more extreme they are, the more you allow them to consume them, it can also not be a good thing, even when you have the best of intentions. And so Nigeria is struggling with the absence of her mother. She's struggling with what she wants to do with her life, and she can't really do much outside of what her father wants her to do. He's starting these freedom schools, but she gets into a different school that would present some really, really great opportunities for her in terms of like college and her future. But she's struggling because she feels a loyalty to her father, but she wants to feel this loyalty to herself. And she's having trouble discerning between the two. And she's starting to recognize that even within this movement that is about Black liberation, right? And this is the issue that a lot of people point out about the civil rights movement. Even in these movements that are about Black liberation, we often forget Black women and girls. They're often left out of the narrative. And so Nigeria is starting to see, and it's a lot of things that I don't want to talk about in terms of like her mother, that she starts to recognize and understand that this is liberation, but liberation is only extending fully to Black men. Black women are still kept on a tight leash where they are not experiencing the same levels of freedom, and they're not experiencing the same levels of recognition. And you see that same thing with the civil rights movement. Black men being at the forefront and people not often recognizing and acknowledging the Black women who were also the brilliant minds behind the movement. So I think that there's a lot to unpack with that book. I, as an adult, really enjoyed it. I would recommend this one for an older teen. I think that there's a lot thematically that goes on that may be hard to understand. And I'm not saying that a teen is incapable of understanding what they're reading. What I'm saying is that even for me as an adult, processing it is interesting because not all of it is written out for you. You have to have kind of some prior knowledge of, like I said, like, you know, the role of Black women in the civil rights movement, Black militants, thinking about Black power, thinking about the Black Panther Party. So all those things wrap into one. If you don't have that prior knowledge, sometimes it could be hard to kind of discern what E.B. Du Bois was doing with it. Now, the big reveal of this book was not a big reveal. It was kind of obvious. And although I did enjoy what she was doing overall with this book, I think that I wish she would have addressed that a little bit more and unpacked it a little bit more, because there were some issues that I think Nigeria hadn't dealt with. And it wasn't that it was brushed over, because there was some reference to how it was being dealt with, but I think that we should have explored that more because it was very heavily trauma-based. Her response was very much so rooted in trauma, and I wish that E.B. Du Bois would have dug just a little bit deeper into. And the last one that I'm going to talk about, 5-star read, is another one about Black women, Black girls, and yeah, our experiences. And this is Delicious Monsters by Lizelle Samberry, which this is my first. I have not read Lizelle's other books, but this was excellent. This is a very difficult read. It took me probably about 2 months to read this book because I took my time with it. It's over 500 pages and it is dark. It is horror, but I think that what is scary about this book for me as a Black woman is how rooted in reality it is. It does deal with a lot of dark themes. There are a lot of content warnings associated with it. Sexual assault, childhood sexual abuse, death. Like, there's a lot. There's a lot, and it was difficult for me at times as someone who has survived a lot of that stuff. It was hard to process because not only are Black girls not often listened to, they're forgotten. And I think that this was an ode to all of the forgotten Black girls. And so for me, it was a very, very emotional read because I have never been listened to. My instance of what I had gone through was only truthfully acknowledged maybe about 1.5 years ago. And this is over 20 years later. And so nothing could be done about my situation, ever. No legal ramifications, no nothing. And it sucks for people, one, not to believe you and to be forgotten. And in this, we are following 2 different perspectives. One takes place in the past, one takes place in a current timeline, and our current timeline, please don't ask me to remember anybody's name because I am on the brink of an emotional collapse, and so I'm not going to remember anybody's name right now. But in our present timeline, we are following a character who is working to interview. They're doing a documentary about this house and the potential of this house being haunted. Now, her mother and her have a very hard relationship. Her mother is abusive. And I think that's another thing that this book does, is that it showcases the impact of intergenerational trauma and how when we don't heal, we pass that trauma on, because when we haven't dealt with it, we go into raising our kids the same way. And it's a lot to be said about the relationship between a Black mom and her Black girl, her little girl. That hit me very hard because I still have a lot that I need to unpack. But I try to be very cognizant of how I treat and how I protect my daughter as a survivor of so many different things, and also at the hands of parental, emotional, and mental abuse. So when I tell y'all, I haven't even gotten to what the book is about, but when I tell y'all this book literally felt like me, like really like felt like me, it really genuinely felt like me. So, but we're following her, and her mother said that she goes and she stays in this house, and that she has grown so much from it. And so she's on this whirlwind tour of writing a book about how it changed her as a person. It's a crock of BS. And so our main character in this timeline is trying to get to the bottom of it. And then we have a timeline that takes place in the past, where once again we have a mother-daughter dynamic that is rooted in intergenerational trauma and abuse. And she has these gifts where she can see the dead. And they move to this house because her mother has inherited a house. So the same house that's in the present timeline. But there's things about the house. This house is haunted. But I will say that the reveals of this were great. I think that Lizelle did such a great job with the pacing and the unfolding of every single thing, because I had no idea how the story was going to turn out, but it was nice to see everything come full circle and really just figure things out as Lizelle was revealing them to me as a reader. This is not so much about the haunted house per se. The house is haunted, but it's the horror and the haunting of people. This is very much so about the horrific things that people do that haunt us, that eat at us, that tear us apart, that leave us forgotten, that leave us feeling broken, that leave us feeling incomplete, that leave us feeling angry and wanting to make people pay for the harm that they have caused without doing the healing. And so we create more pain and more trauma, and it becomes this cycle of Black women being harmed, and then having Black girls who they don't have a good relationship with, who then end up getting harmed. And it was so good. And I you know, some people are like, oh, I just didn't connect with the book. And I'm like, if you only knew the layers behind this book, you would understand why it's such a big deal. I think that Lizelle wrote this because the complexities that exist for Black women, and especially when they've been exposed to sexual assault, rape, childhood sexual abuse, it's tough because we're less likely to report, we're less likely to be believed, and it just creates, like I said, it creates the cycle until you have someone who says enough. And so with our main characters, you see these two strong Black women who are enough. And I think I got emotional when I was reading it because I was like, that was me. That has to be me. Because in my family, it literally has been, we've been in this cycle. We've been in this same chaotic cycle of getting harmed, not dealing with it, feeling anger, having, you know, having Black little girls and then raising them, and the relationships are not good. And it was like that between my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, and me. And I'm like, I cannot do this with me and my daughter. Like, I have to stop it. And it's so hard. It's so hard because you have to accept, you have to, I don't want to say accept, you have to recognize what you've been through, and you have to deal with that pain, and you have to face that pain straight on. And it's so hard. It is the hardest thing in the world. It just is very, very hard to recognize that, because it's easy to avoid, it's easy to feel anger, it's easy to lash out, and it's easy to keep all this stuff tightened up and to perpetuate the same cycle. But I don't want my daughter to have to go through that same thing. And I think for them it has to stop with me, because if it doesn't stop with me, it'll keep going on and on and on. And this book was just beautiful. I did a horrible job like explaining what it's about, but honestly, I didn't go in knowing anything about it. I knew that it was a haunted house. I didn't even realize it was told in dual perspective until I started reading it, and I was like, oh, this is dual perspective. I think it's best to go in just not knowing much. But Lizelle did an amazing job. Oh my gosh. This book was so good. It was very, very good. And I think that for me, it was very, very good because it's coming from a very, very emotional place. And I was not expecting Lizelle to kind of like say, Ashley, here's your life in a book served up to you. I hope you hope you enjoy. If Blood Like Magic and the sequel or anything like this in terms of like writing, listen, I am game. I'm super, super excited. But yeah, that's definitely going to be one of my favorites of this year. It was so good. All right, y'all, so that's it. Those are my favorites of May. This is a lot easier. This wasn't as difficult. I really appreciated that this was not as difficult as doing a traditional wrap-up. Let me know in the comments down below, like, what were some of your favorites and maybe your most disappointing books of May. And as always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content, click the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. If you're looking for ways to support this channel, all the links for that as well as social media will be down in the description box below, and I will be back with another video soon.